As someone whose father signed the instrument of accession in 1947, Dr. Karan Singh has had a lifelong association with Kashmir. He said that his biggest concern is to further the welfare of all people, all sections and all religions in the state. But today, Kashmir is in a different situation. Article 370 that defined Kashmir's unique status is gone. The state has been bifurcated and political dissent has been shut down. Dr. Karan Singh joins us now. Sir, thanks very much for speaking to us. Do you accept the argument that political voices needed to be put behind bars or in detention because of the security situation on the ground?
Well, first of all, Vishnu, let me tell you that the state is not Kashmir, the state is Jammu and Kashmir. It's a constant mistake being made by many people. It is the composite state of Jammu and Kashmir we are talking about that had several units. Some were lost in 1947. Now Ladakh has become autonomous and we are left with Jammu and Kashmir as a union territory. Obviously, it's never a good thing if you have to put political leaders in detention. That goes without saying, because a democracy is all about free speech and free communications. I am not aware of what the situation on the ground is, frankly, so I cannot comment. But the reason that they're put in detention, there must be some good reason, I presume. Otherwise, why would former chief ministers and senior political leaders be put behind bars, as it were?
And sir, what would you like to venture a guess on what that good reason is? Because what actually took place prior to their detention, a lot of people would argue, is not very much. There were a handful of tweets, none calling for massive protests, everybody calling for peace on the ground. And then these detentions took place. So is that something that concerns you deeply, that the voices of dissent which exist in Jammu and Kashmir have been shut down for now?
Well, for now, certainly they have been shut down. But Vishnu, now that this has happened, I think we should now look forwards to see what happens later, after this crisis is over. I mean, there have been, as I said in my original statement, there have been some positive features of this also. Ladakh's emergence as a union territory, for example, they had asked it for a very long time. It has long last emerged as a union territory. Even in Jammu, large sections of Jammu feel that they have gained from this. We have to see what sort of economic opportunities are going to open for the state of Jammu and Kashmir now. We have to see whether we are able to resume normal life as soon as possible. But that will, you're right, that will obviously involve political dialogue. And the sooner that begins, I think, the better for all concerned.
Is it your concern, sir, that going forward, it's unclear who exactly is going to be speaking to the people on the ground, people who are affected, people who might argue that whatever has taken place in Jammu and Kashmir doesn't suit their interests, challenges their notion of autonomy?
Yes.
So that while at the macro level you've got announcements of economic gain for Jammu and Kashmir coming up, new schemes which might come up, greater employment, there are some who would argue that a chasm still exists between these schemes which have been announced, say by the Prime Minister at Red Fort, and people on the ground who A, may not know about it because of the communications shutdown, and B, they don't really know how it's going to work. So is this lack of communication the biggest problem?
Yes, this is the problem. But in addition to the schemes, for example, the gender inequalities that were there, they have been remedied.
Yes.
The fact that the scheduled tribes and the scheduled castes will probably get more representation. The fact that many lakhs of refugees from West Pakistan who've been living in a disenfranchised state for 70 years will finally be enfranchised. So as I'm saying, there's going to be different responses in different parts of the state. In Jammu, I think the response is generally positive. Also in Leh, in the valley, there will definitely be negative reactions, that's very clear, because there's been this very sudden and dramatic development which nobody expected. But one can only hope that a situation will arise when the political dialogue will resume, because without that it will be very difficult to go forward.
And sir, looking...
In fact, we even hoping that elections will take place at some point in time.
Right. And sir, looking forward, would you, the remarks made by the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh or Jitendra Singh, that if any talks with Pakistan are to take place in the future, they need to include Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. How do you react to these talks? I mean, that seems to be something very much on this government's agenda, an integration of Jammu and Kashmir with Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
Well, that's again, that's an entirely new dimension, Vishnu, which brings in all sorts of dangerous possibilities. I mean, obviously, when we talk with Pakistan, we will have to talk about the entire state. Again, let me stress the point that it is the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, my father's original state, which includes Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan, what is POJK, and the Kashmir Valley. So talks will obviously have to cover the entire state. But the sort of statements that were made recently, I think, bring in a new dimension, which could also bring in the possibility of some kind of a major conflict, and that is something which is deeply disturbing.
So in terms of some of the positives you see in the decision which is taken, obviously you've spoken about women's rights. What about economic integration, more economic integration with the rest of the country, the possibility of people in other parts of India buying land, property in Jammu and Kashmir, setting up industry, something which can happen much more than it's taken place in the past. Do you believe that Jammu and Kashmir might actually see a very positive future going forward?
Well, one hopes so, because it's not so much a question of buying vast areas of land, but setting up industries is certainly a very important thing. I hope it will be eco-friendly industries, by the way, because the last thing we need in the valley are pollution-heavy industries. But economic growth, employment opportunities, I think, are very important, because unemployment in Kashmir also, as elsewhere in the country, is a major problem. And the Kashmir youth are very, very talented, as you can see, whether it is competitive examinations or whether it is sport, they are doing extremely well. So if they get an opportunity for more employment and to get more involved in the much larger canvas that is India, perhaps in the longish run it would be of great advantage.
And going forward, sir, how much of a challenge do you believe that it's going to be when you look at the entire issue of Kashmiri identity? That's been integral to the entire, synonymous with the entire issue of autonomy. A lot of people across the country feel that an integrated Kashmir is something that's essential for a strong Indian identity. But that's been something that's been challenged on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. Do you feel going forward a more integrated Jammu and Kashmir will result in a stronger Indian identity in that entire region, Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh?
Well, the Indian identity, of course, as you know, Vishnu, there is a national identity and there are strong sub-national identities. The Tamils, for example, or the Bengalis, or the Odias. I mean, many of our states have a strong sub-national or regional identities, you may call it. Now, Jammu Kashmir didn't have one, it had three regional identities. It had a regional identity in Ladakh, which had a different set of aspirations, regional identity in Jammu, the Dogra identity, don't forget. Jammu and Kashmir was a Dogra empire. It was my ancestors who built this state and took the borders of India all the way up to Tibet and Central Asia. So the Dogras have their own identity. And the Kashmiri identity also is a very special identity with their marvelous language and cultural traditions and extraordinary capacities. So there are, yes, there are identities, sub-regional identities, which I think have to be given play, whether they are given play through a constitutional structure or otherwise. I think the whole system of our constitution is federalism.
All
And
right.
that will apply to Jammu and
And sir,
Kashmir
there's been
also.
this split within the Congress party. Some leaders have said that the move on,
Yes.
on making 370 essentially non-functional, 35A goes, the bifurcation of the state. Some leaders have actually backed what the government has actually done. Which side of this divide do you lie on? So do you believe it's a good thing which has happened?
Well, I said, if you remember, I said in my very first statement that I do not accept a blanket condemnation of this, because one has to look upon this in the broader perspective, and one has to try and see. It is certainly very startling and very sudden. The way it came was unprecedented. Within 2 days, Parliament passed a constitutional amendment or constitutional change, whatever you want to call it. So it came very suddenly. So people need a little time to come to terms with what is
But do you
happening.
accept it, sir?
But in the party,
do you
yes,
believe
there are views,
it's
of course.
good for Kashmir,
No,
Jammu,
well, it's not a question
Ladakh?
of accepting
Is
it or not, Vishnu, now. Vishnu, now that it has happened, we have to go ahead. That's why I said. It's no use trying to pretend that one can go back to the old situation. So you have to accept it. There's no other way. And therefore, if one accepts it with a positive mindset and tries to see what can be done, what can be achieved from it for the various sub-regional identities in Jammu and Kashmir, I would think that is the way to go.
All
I
right.
know that the party has very strong views on this, but I have taken my own independent view, as you know, I have in my
And
first
sir,
statement also.
so would I be incorrect in saying that you believe we need to pragmatically look at the entire issue, and that you, out of your belief in pragmatism, you accept what has taken place?
Yes, I think that would be accurate. I mean, the fact that it is a union territory, it would have been better, I feel, if it had remained a state. It could have been under governor's rule for as long as necessary, but it should have remained a state. So it's become a union territory now. One hopes that at least it will come back to the status of a full-fledged state.
Right,
I mean,
so that's
leave
some-
autonomy aside, it's now not even a full-fledged state.
All right. Well, that's an important point. A lot of
That's
people
what I
say
feel.
that at some stage, perhaps it would come back to the status of a full-fledged state. But I
hope
take
so.
your words. They were carefully measured. But I think the point you're talking about, pragmatism, looking ahead, not necessarily looking at the past, and hoping for the best in this scenario, clearly identifies your position, sir. Perhaps where you lie on this side of this debate. Thank you. Yes,
and
sir.
realizing that there may be sections of people who are traumatized, but approaching them with sympathy and compassion, and with a minimum use of force. That's what I would suggest.
All right, Dr. Karan Singh, thank you very much, sir, for speaking to us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Vishnu.